They've told me I shouldn't have come to Canada if I didn't want to fill out an app. The officer here. I'm returning to Canada for not you, the other guy over here. I have it on video. It's my first time coming back to Canada in 4 years. He told me I shouldn't have entered Canada if I didn't want to fill out the app. I said I don't want to agree to the terms of services. He stopped me. He knew somebody must have told him what had happened upstairs. And he was pretty angry with me. He told me you should have gone to speak with public health. You shouldn't have traveled to this country if you're not going to follow the rules and download this app. He kept telling me that he is able to detain and arrest me at the direction of public health.
The impact of ArriveCAN application for entry into Canada is becoming increasingly apparent. Several groups and organizations are taking legal action against the ArriveCAN application, such as Democracy Fund, TDF, and the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, GCCF. Failure to comply with this new electronic pass requirement can result in serious consequences, including jail time. But to date, we have seen hundreds of Canadians fined more than $6,000 and forced into quarantine despite their dual vaccination. Today, we heard the story of Andrew Todd, who had been out of Canada for about 3 years. Upon its return, he saw his freedom to be Canadian evaporated after an interaction with border official and public health official. His story is one of hundreds of others, and we at ArriveCAN News want to help as best we can. The Democracy Fund, an independent and non-partisan private foundation who works in partnership with us, will take care of Andrew Todd's case. You can contribute to help many Canadians with a money contribution via noarrivecan.com. This is the incredible but true story of Mr. Andrew Todd. Let's check it out.
Around January of 2020, I had my family, my brother and my mother come visit me in Vietnam for a motorcycle trip. I wasn't living there, but it was a vacation thing. And that was like the same week that COVID started. And so Vietnam, unlike Canada and the United States and other countries, decided to close the borders to China immediately, rather than calling that racist. And so Vietnam was heralded as a success story because they didn't get any COVID there for about 1.5 years. They were able to control the virus not entering the country. So while looking at Canada, the reason I decided to stay in Vietnam was because I was watching what you guys were going through with businesses being closed, not being able to visit relatives, not being able to travel, and everything. Life was great in Vietnam because no COVID had gotten there. When things changed was eventually when they opened the borders. Omicron eventually got there, and the way I saw firsthand what an authoritarian government could really do. And so what happened in Vietnam, if you tested positive for COVID, they would take you and your family and your neighbors and their families and all of your coworkers and their families, and maybe if you ate at a restaurant, everybody that was at that restaurant that day and their families, and send them away to a government quarantine camp for 21 days, whether you had COVID or not. And you basically lived 21 days in converted classrooms with bunk beds. The pharmacists and hospitals were told if anybody showed up and asked for any medication because they had a cold or sniffles or anything that might be COVID, then they'd be reported. So what happened in Vietnam was if you were sick, you didn't tell anybody, you just stayed in. You were scared that if you had a cold and you went to get some cough drops or something, or some Tylenol, that they would report you to the government and your family and your neighbors would be all sent away. So everybody was scared of the government there. I hadn't been home in about 3 years, and I flew home for a wedding of a family member of my cousin. And so I arrived in Canada and arrived at the Pearson Airport. When I entered, I gave my passport, and the border agent told me that I would have to then show my ArriveCAN app to the public health people. And I told him that I hadn't done the public or the ArriveCAN app. It's my first time coming back to Canada in 4 years. He told me I shouldn't have entered Canada if I didn't want to fill out the app. I said I don't want to agree to the terms of services. And so I kept asking him, am I detained? He said no. I said, okay, well, I'm going to go home then. And so I walked away. I went down to the carousel place to get my luggage. I picked up my luggage. And then when I went to leave, there's one last border security agent there, and he stopped me. He knew somebody must have told him what had happened upstairs, and he was pretty angry with me. He told me, you should have gone to speak with public health. You shouldn't have traveled to this country if you're not going to follow the rules and download this app. They've told me I shouldn't have come to Canada if I didn't want to fill out an app. The officer here. I'm returning to Canada for not you, the other guy over here. I have it on video. It's my first time coming back to Canada in 4 years. He told me I shouldn't have entered Canada if I didn't want to fill out the app. I said I don't want to agree to the terms of services. And so they brought me to kind of a secondary waiting area, and then two police officers. I think they're Peel regional police officers that have a detachment at the airport there. A police officer came. The border security agent gave him my passport. I asked him not to, but he handed him my passport. And then the public health screening officer came. And first I asked her, are you detaining me? She told me that she was detaining me. And so I asked the police officer if he could clarify if she has the ability to detain me. He's informed me that he's detained me. I've asked him why. He's also told me that the health lady has detained me. He has my passport, he won't give it back. He gave my passport to the Health Canada lady, and I asked him not to. So now I'm just wondering, because I've asked him many times, am I being detained? And he said if I try to leave, I'm going to be arrested. I'm just confused by the situation.
So more or less, when it comes to the passport, like, this is stuff that I learned as well. You don't own the passport.
No, I understand.
In Canada. So more or less.
But he's not able to present it to another government agency on my behalf, though.
Public health, he can.
He can?
Yeah, he can. So the biggest thing is, like, you're going to be released once they give you, like, it's all your right in the world to refuse it.
Sure. He's been calling up, getting my address to give them more information on me. And then it kind of went back and forth like that, continuously asking, am I being detained? What am I being detained for? If not, can I go home? And finally, the police officer said, you're not being detained. I said, so am I free to leave? He said, well, you're not free to leave. So they're able to detain me then?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're detaining me. Yeah. If you do not
Public health can detain me.
Police, yes.
For what? What can they detain me for? What crime have I been? Am I suspected of being committed? And what authority do they have to detain me? No, well, first I'm asking him because
he's the police officer. He doesn't. He's not
under
an expert
section
on this.
58,
Yeah.
failure to comply with the order prohibited or subjected to any conditions to be entering into Canada.
And so she has the ability to
They're the ones
to detain and arrest me.
They're the ones who know. They give me power to arrest you.
Okay. So I just asked, and she said she is detaining me. So who is detaining me
I
right
said
now?
I'm not detaining you. I said until you follow, you're under assessment right
Okay.
now. We are examining you.
So I'm free to go then if I'm not being detained.
So you're not free to go.
Who's detaining me? Her or you?
She can give me the power to detain.
So right now I'm not being detained, which means I have the power to leave.
Well, if you try to leave, then I will detain you.
And he kept telling me that he is able to detain and arrest me at the direction of public health, and that's the reason that he's doing that. So yeah, at no point during the detainment was I told of my right to counsel. I'm not a lawyer, but reading up afterwards, this is something that they're supposed to do. I asked to speak with a supervisor to kind of clear up the detainment issue, if I'm really being detained or not. That was of no help.
So as of right now,
He told me the Quarantine Act when I asked him.
So then that's where he's detained. I'm not dealing with this situation. I don't even know what's going on in the situation.
Okay.
He just told me about his passport, right? So obviously,
Well, I asked to speak with a supervisor to get it clarified, whether I'm being
that's
detained.
public health. So you speak to public health about that because the Quarantine Act.
He told me
they
he's
can do
detaining
it.
me. They told me you have the absolute right not to fill out this app, but if you don't fill it out, then you have to accept a ticket, and the ticket being $6,255. So those are the options that they gave me. The police officer who had my passport, he handed it to the public health officer. I asked him not to, he handed it to her. And then he phoned into his own dispatch because your passport, when entering Canada, it's all you need to get in, but it has your date of birth, maybe where you were born, your name, but it doesn't have your address or phone number or any of this information. It's not a requirement to enter Canada to divulge this information. And so he got on the radio with my passport and he called his dispatch to try to get that basic information about me.
Okay, so ask the public health.
All they need for you right now is an address.
I don't have an address. I've been out of the country for 4 years.
Because right now you got a quarantine. Where are you quarantining at?
I don't have an address.
that's something I guess on the ArriveCAN that they ask of where you.
Yeah, and I don't want to accept the terms and conditions of the ArriveCAN.
Oh, okay. So then that's your right.
Okay.
You take the ticket. That's your release form, and
Sure.
you can do whatever. That's exactly how it goes.
Eventually, they wrote the ticket, and then they told me I was free to go. They never tested me for COVID. It was clear to me that if they thought I was a threat, they would either force me into quarantine. They wouldn't just give me a ticket and tell me to leave. It seemed a little bit punitive. I mean, I love my country. I haven't lived here in a long time. It's somewhere that I want to move back to eventually. But yeah, I had privacy concerns. I spent about 8 years in the military, previously working as a naval communicator, and something that you learn in this job is the importance of the sensitivity of health information. If we have something that has sensitive health information, whether it's survey or vaccination status, things like this, then we treat this with a high degree of security and caution. It can't go on the same computer. And when it comes to entering your own country, it would be a different story. Like, I've traveled to different other countries, and if I'm entering another country that's not my own, I kind of consent to whatever the entry requirements are for that country, and I follow them. Coming into my country, the only requirement should be showing that I'm a citizen of the country. I shouldn't be coerced through threats of fines or imprisonment or arrest to be able to enter my own country. All of the people that disagreed with what I did, none of them brought up that anything that I did jeopardized anybody's safety or health. It was always, you should have just gone along with it. You should have known this was going to happen. You should have just followed the rules. And yeah, the same with that officer and the screening officer. They're using the Quarantine Act. And the Quarantine Act, this would be a different story if it was a disease with like a 50% mortality rate. This would be a totally different story. It's clear to me that they didn't feel that I was a threat, and nobody that's like spoken out against what I've done feels that what I've done has threatened anybody's safety or security. So no, I don't think that this app is helping for any security or health in Canada.
My name's Alan Honor. I'm one of the lawyers at the Democracy Fund who's taking the federal government to court over ArriveCAN. You've just heard the story of Andrew Todd. Here at TDF, we get people calling us every day, people just like Andrew Todd, and they're worried about ArriveCAN. They don't want to use this government app to provide their private information to the government. They don't know who they're sharing it with. They don't know how long the government plans on keeping this information. They say that it's a breach of their privacy rights. We agree with people like Andrew Todd, and that is why here at TDF, we're taking the federal government to court, and we filed an application with the Federal Court of Canada. If you'd like to help us fight the federal government of Canada, you can make a donation at noarrivecan.com.
So as you know, at Ruben News, we are doing something. We are challenging the application of ArriveCAN. You can contribute generously on the website of noarrivecan.com, and as well you can sign the petition, and if you think that you are a perfect case for challenging it, please fill the form as well. Thank you.